Please proceed.
I first wanted to clear up what a conservative is. It's not about spending everything, as the Speaker Emeritus may kind of imply. It's about spending wisely. Republicans believe that we should spend money on teaching people how to fish, teaching them so that they don't live off of government for the rest of their lives. So we believe that it is wise to spend our TANF money that prevents poverty, that teaches people to have higher paying jobs. So we believe in spending in those areas. The thing that really gets to a conservative is spending on pork, things that are not the priorities of the various departments. For example, the first speaker talked about this budget putting education first. Well, let's look at how we put education first. You know, in the first reading of this budget, or the first crossover, I brought up a lot of concerns about how priorities within the Department of Education were ignored. Back then in the budget, instead of funding many worthwhile Department of Education projects, we put $1.7 million for a synthetic turf field for Leilehua High School stadium. It didn't seem to go anywhere, my comments, because in fact we doubled that. And in the final budget, we gave $3.3 million for Leilehua's turf field. We also find that Mililani's turf field is in there as well, almost $1 million. And also, we're funding almost $1 million for Moanalua High School artificial surface. I can't tell you how many high schools and intermediate schools statewide would love that field. But I'll tell you, the Department of Education had those nowhere in its priorities. So what were the priorities of the Department of Education, who we have appointed and who have been hired to be the gurus to tell us what priorities are in the Department of Education? What they feel is putting education first. The Department of Education, number 19 on their priority list, $4 million, wanted to renovate McKinley High School's building 857. We cut that out of the budget. This budget also eliminates funding for Kapa'a Elementary School's library, which is 24 on DOE's priority list at $6.8 million. This budget also eliminates funding for Konawai'a's middle locker shower building, which is number 28 on the DOE's priority list at almost $10 million. It eliminates design funds for my sister neighbor district for Kapoleitu Elementary School, an area which is the fastest growing school area in our state. This is number 26 on the DOE's priority list. But apparently, turf fields and a nice track come before crowded schools. For me personally, Mr. Speaker, and this has been a trend that I've seen since I've been elected, we've done very little to help victims of crime. The Honolulu Advertiser published a newspaper article just this weekend talking about how some of the four most high priority victims, pro-victims legislation did not go through. The one shining light that made it through this legislature.
Representative Pine, you're out of order at this point. Can you confine your remarks to the budget and not the measure that is not before us?
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr.
Please
Speaker.
proceed.
Lacking in this budget is money for the one shining star that was mentioned as passing this legislation, and that was to protect victims by imposing electronic monitoring system on perpetrators of domestic violence. We passed that bill, but if a victim is so unlucky as to have that violent perpetrator say that he can't afford an electronic monitoring system, then he most likely will not have to wear one because we took the funds out of the budget for that. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very disturbed that we're passing legislation that would give more rights to prisoners, will help us to help their families to survive them being in prison, give more money to bring prisoners back home, and we did very little to support victims, very little to support victims' children. And so that's why I rise with the highest reservation, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much.